Chapter 2. Mandalay, 1966-1967. It eventually occurred to Sayadaw that he needed to leave his village and travel elsewhere if he wanted to broaden his education. At the end of his second Vasa as a novice in October 1966, he decided to move to Mandalay. Muninda didn't want me to go. So I told my grandpa, "Please let him know that if he doesn't allow me to go to Mandalay, I will disrobe." My uncle knew I'd do it too, but before my grandpa talked with him, I went to Muninda myself and asked for his permission. He didn't say anything. Instead, he prepared his robes, then went to my grandpa and told him about my request. My grandfather told him, "You'd better let him go, or he'll disrobe." So Muninda came back to me and said, "Okay." Sayadaw's grandfather was very wealthy and had sent Sayadaw's father to stay at a temple in Mandalay called Take Tit Kyang, Parj Take, when he was young to study there as a layperson. And so Sayadaw was soon accompanied by his father and Muninda to Take Tit Kyang, Paya Rgee Take, where his father's 80-year-old teacher, Sayadaw Upaduma, was still living. Sayadaw was soon ready to begin the next phase of his education. He was assigned a 60-year-old monk named Sayadaw Isaria to be his teacher of Abhidhamma. Sayadaw was the only student and that was his only class, but the intensity of this informal educational opportunity would benefit him years down the line. Among the many things besides Abhidhamma that Sayadaw learned as a novice living in Mandalay was that going on alms round each day was very difficult. 31 Las Vegas Sayadaw going for alms was the means by which mendicant monks and novices received food for their daily meal. Walking through inhabited areas with their eyes downcast, monks and novices accepted offerings from any donors along their path. They were forbidden from begging for food. There were some 20,000 monastics living in Mandalay at the time, and when Sayadaw was living there, the population of the city was about 350,000 people, so the monks and novices had to walk quickly, and for many miles in the quickly warming day, in order to collect enough alms for their meal. Having walked so far from their temples, they'd then have to take buses back. Burmese orders Sayadaw was talking once with a student about the different monastic orders found in Theravada Buddhist countries. In Thailand, there are two primary monastic orders. One, the Maha Nikaya, which could be characterized as the mainstream order, and two, the Dhammayut Nikaya, which was established in 1833 as a reform of the Maha Nikaya, as it was felt by many that the practice of Vinaya within the mainstream order was lackadaisical. Maha Nikaya monks outnumbered Dhammayut Nikaya monks by perhaps 10 to 1. The student asked Sayadaw if similarly differing orders exist in Myanmar. Burma has 9 official orders, but there are only 2 main orders, the Shwegyin Nikaya and the Sudama Nikaya. The Sudama, or Thudama order, is the largest monastic order in Myanmar. Established in the late 1700s, today the order has nearly 470,000 members. This represents some 87% of all monks in the country. More than 1/3 of those monastics live in Mandalay, or Shan State. Sayadaw shared some history about the formation of the order. 32 Mandalay, 1966-1967. It was originally named for the building in Mandalay, where the monks would go to teach the king in those days. His name was King Bodha Paya, and the Burmese called the building Thutama Zayats. On every Buddhist holy day, the whole royal family would go to Thudama Zayats, which had a big hall with columns, and they'd learn the Dhamma from the monks. Since the monks had to teach the royal family on the holy days, they didn't have time to study the Dhamma at their monastery. There were 500 learned monks who lived in that temple, and to this day the monks in that order still take the holy days as their day off from studying. The Shwegyin Nikaya, on the other hand, was named for the village of Shwegyin in Upper Burma. Shwegyin means gold, so the village was known as the Gold Village. The order was established in the mid-1800s. There was a very famous monk from that village. He was the chief abbot monk, and he practiced meditation and followed the Vinaya very strictly. He didn't handle money, for instance. His disciples came to be Shwegyin monks because he was the Sayadaw of the village of Shwegyin. The Shwegyin Nikaya is the second largest monastic order in Myanmar. It is more orthodox in its adherence to the Vinaya than the Sudama Nikaya. Sayadaw would later speak about the great detail in which young novices in Burma learned Abhidhamma, the Buddhist analysis of consciousness, as well as the commentaries and sub-commentaries. The commentaries were traditional interpretations given of the Pali Canon. They were largely compiled since the 4th century CE. However, they were based on early ones, now lost, which were written down at the same time as the canon itself in the last century BCE. The sub-commentaries, on the other hand, were commentaries 33 Las Vegas Sayadaw upon the commentaries written in Sri Lanka during the 12th century. Sayadaw explained that it was very difficult to pass the examinations on this material required in formal school settings because they were based on memorization. Sayadaw reflected on some of these challenges he faced as a 19-year-old novice in Mandalay. "I didn't have friends I could learn from. I studied, but I didn't know specific techniques, so I learned by memorizing everything. One page of text might have been in Pali, and I was expected to translate it into Burmese. But I had to memorize it without taking notes, word by word. It was a very hard 6 months. He'd also have to massage Sayadaw U Isariya for 2 hours every night. This started at 7 p.m., while about 10 of the resident monks would pepper him with questions testing his knowledge of Abhidhamma. This intensive way of deepening his understanding was a good learning experience for him, though, as his solid memorization of the teachings would prove useful as his education progressed. Sayadaw also struggled with the climate of Mandalay. "In my hometown in summer, around April, before the Buddhist New Year, it's about 60 degrees Fahrenheit in the mountains. My hometown is very beautiful, with all the mountains. But in Mandalay, it was 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Mandalay is only about 200 miles away from my hometown, but it's a different place, very hot in summertime. I couldn't handle the heat very well. So a few months before Vasa that year, one of the monks told me that Burma's capital city at the time, Rangoon, which came to be called Yangon in 1989, wasn't like Mandalay. He said it was much cooler, maybe 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very nice. And so in mid-April 1967, 6 months after his arrival, Sayadaw departed Mandalay en route to Rangoon. 34 Mandalay, 1966-1967. The 31 planes of existence. Sayadaw was talking to a student one time about different aspects of the beings inhabiting the various planes of existence. The 31 planes include the 4 miserable realms, animal, hungry ghost, demon, and hell; the human realm; the 6 celestial or deva realms, Katu Maharajika, Tavatimsa, Yama, Tusita, Nimanarati, and Paranimita Vasavati; and the 20 Brahma realms, 16 in the fine material realm, or Rupaloka, and 4 in the immaterial realm, or Arupaloka. Sayadaw talked a bit about the realm of hungry ghosts, Pitas. We can't usually see these beings, but we can sometimes sense them in other ways, such as when they knock on a door, or create an unpleasant smell. Scientists haven't figured out how to prove their existence yet, but some meditators can see them with their mind, or through divine eye. The master then took some time to talk about the lifespans of beings in the 6 celestial realms. Of celestial beings, 99.99% have a lifespan of at least 9 million years. But there are 2 exceptions. They will die if they get distracted by sensual pleasures and forget to eat, and they will die if they get angry. Sayadaw explained that 50 years in the life of a human being is just a single day in the life of a deva inhabiting the Katuma Harajika realm, whereas a 100-year human life is a single day for a deva in Tavatimsa. The lifespans continue to double. 35. Las Vegas Sayadaw. As such, a day in the life of a deva in the Yama realm is 200 human years. For a Tusita deva, it is 400 human years. For a Nimanarati deva, it is 800 human years. And for a deva of the Paranimita Vasavati realm, it is 1,600 human years. Beings are born into the 6 celestial realms based on 2 things. 1, their good karma, and 2, their desire. Where do you want to be reborn? Sayadaw asked hypothetically. If your answer is the top level, Paranimita Vasavati, whether you are actually reborn there will depend on those 2 things. He compared it to someone wanting to be the head of a company. To be the head of a company, you need to have the ability, karma, but if you don't want the position, i.e., you have no desire, you won't be the boss. Similarly, if you want the job but aren't qualified, you won't get it. But if you are qualified and want the job, you can get it. Most meditators want to be reborn in Tusita because that was where our Buddha lived before he took his final birth in the human world. And the next Buddha to be, Miteya, is there now. The master explained that very good beings live in Tusita. Most beings who gain the first stage of enlightenment are reborn there. The Buddha's mother, who was reborn as a male, resides there now as well. What if a being is reborn in the 2 highest Deva realms, Nimanarati or Paranimita Vasavati? The student asked. Can they go down to Tusita if they want? Yes, replied the master. When the Buddha ascended to Tavatimsa to teach Abhidhamma 7 years after his enlightenment, many devas came from their realms to hear him, including his former mother. What about the lowest celestial realm, Katumaharajika? The student asked. Can they ascend to Tusita? Yes, said the master before continuing. 36 Mandalay, 1966-1967. Both devas and human beings can gain enlightenment. When the Buddha gave his first sermon, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, a lot of devas gained enlightenment. Sayadaw took a moment to revisit the topic of hungry ghosts. There are many kinds of pitas. If you study the suttas, you'll see that there are 2 places where it mentions a pita gaining enlightenment. According to one of the suttas, a pita came to the Buddha's temple looking for food. At the time, the Buddha was giving a Dhamma talk. The pita was curious to hear what the Buddha was teaching, but her son was there too, crying. The pita tried to comfort her son, who eventually stopped crying. As the pita listened to the Buddha give the Dhamma, she gained enlightenment. Maybe this pita's rebirth consciousness was just right, but this is a very rare exception to the norm, maybe 1 in a trillion. The student, still curious about Tusita, asked, how can we be reborn in Tusita? Just do good things and observe your sila. Like Visakha, a contemporary of the Buddha and his leading female disciple, for example, who built the magnificent Pabarama temple and donated it to the Sangha. Now she's a deva in Nimanarati. The master next explained that by the time of our Buddha, 3 previous Buddhas had already appeared in this present world system. Kappa. Their names were Kakusanda Buddha, Konagamana Buddha, and Kassapa Buddha. During Kakusanda's time, human beings on average lived for 40,000 years. During Konagamana's life, they lived for 30,000 years. During Kassapa's life, they lived for 20,000 years. And during the life of the 4th Buddha, of this Kappa, our Buddha, whose name was Gautama, people lived for 100 years. 37 Las Vegas Sayadaw explained that about every 100 years, the average human lifespan reduces by 1 year. Now that our Buddha has been gone 2,600 years, human beings live about 74 years, right? The student was intrigued. Over the next 100 years, average lifespans will drop to 73 years, etc., until it eventually gets down to 10 years. Human beings may only get 5 or 6 years to gain merit by that time, but then it will start to increase again until human lifespan grows up to asamkhya years, an uncountable amount, or 1 + 140 zeros. And then it'll fall to 80,000 years. Then, the 5th and final Buddha of this Kappa, Miteya Buddha, will appear. The next Buddha has already completed his virtue perfections, parami, but is waiting out his time in Tusita until his final rebirth. He will attain enlightenment and become the next Buddha in the distant future, during a time when the Dhamma has been lost to the world. Sayadaw expressed that we should understand these lifespans, and how long it'll take before Miteya appears in the human world. Otherwise, we might expect for a new Buddha to arrive perhaps next year or in a decade. Why did it take Gautama Buddha so long to perfect his parami? Asked the student. The Buddha-to-be did unwholesome things too. He was an animal for 113 lives. He was a dog, an elephant, and other animals too. How can an animal perfect its parami? So it took our Buddha a long time. Sayadaw then began to explain the lifespans of beings in the Brahma realms, where age is measured in terms of kappas. Lifespans increase as beings inhabit the higher and higher realms. It can be helpful if we have an understanding of the various kinds of kappas, eons or world cycles. They have been described as being of three types: 38 Mandalay, 1966-1967. 1. Interim eon, the amount of time it takes for a human being's lifespan to rise from 10 years to its maximum, asamkhya years, and then fall back to 10 years. 2. Incalculable eon, an amount of time 64 times that of an interim eon. And 3. Great eon, mahakappa. The commentaries describe a mahakappa as being like a massive stone some 13 miles long and 7 miles high. Imagine if every 100 years a person took a piece of cotton, rubbed the stone with it one time, and then threw it away. By the time the stone was finally worn away to nothing, the mahakappa would still not be finished. Sayadaw explained that the Buddha's first teacher, Mrolara Kalama, had been reborn in one of the high Brahma realms because of the strength of his jhana. His lifespan was 60,000 mahakappa. Similarly, because of his jhana, the Buddha's second teacher, Uddaka Ramaputta, who may have been a Jain, had been reborn in the highest Brahma realm and had a lifespan of 84,000 mahakappa. After the Buddha attained supreme enlightenment, he'd contemplated who might understand his teaching. At first he reflected, though Lara and Uddaka would understand. But then he learned that both meditation masters had recently died and been reborn in realms where beings did not have bodies, and having no eyes or ears, could not receive the Dhamma. Even a long lifespan in the Brahma realms has its share of drawbacks. Despite the unfathomably long lifespans of beings inhabiting the highest Brahma realms, even those beings must eventually die and be reborn elsewhere, unless the beings attained arahant while in those realms. Rebirth would occur in the human or celestial worlds. And from either of those realms, if unenlightened beings create enough bad karma, they can later be reborn in the hell realm. The Buddha was once reflecting upon this reality, and a smile came upon his face. His attendant, Venerable Yunanda, asked the Buddha why he was smiling. In reply, the Buddha shared that he'd been a Brahma in a previous life, but then he'd died and been reborn as a human. But as a human, he'd done something bad and was then reborn as an animal. 39 Las Vegas Sayadaw then shifted gears a bit. Other religions, like Islam, Hinduism, and Christianity, believe in their gods, but they don't know where their gods live. Visitors to the temple over the years had asked him from time to time whether he believed in God. In Buddhism, there isn't just one God. There are different kinds of gods, devas. And even gods existing on the same plane differ because of their karma. He elaborated with an analogy. Las Vegas, for example, is one city, but it has different parts. And the quality of its parts differs. Prices differ too. In certain parts of Las Vegas, a 3-bedroom house may cost $100,000, but most people wouldn't want to live there because it's not an attractive part of the city. How about the neighborhood around the temple? A house might cost $300,000. What about nearby Summerlin? The same house may be $400,000. It's the same with the Brahma world. A being may gain first jhana and be reborn on the same level as another being who has gained first jhana, but their lifespans may differ because of each being's karma. Where does Sakka live? The student inquired. He was asking about one of the kings of the celestial realms, Tavatimsa. But he also has power on Katu Maharajika. Even though they have their own kings in the four directions, they are still under the power of King Sokka, who is the chief. Sayadaw likened it to an ambassador who takes care of both the United States and Mexico. 40 Mandalay, 1966-1967. He can't rule Yama or Tusita, though, because he has limits. They have their own kings. Every celestial world has its leader. Can the leader of a realm lead its inhabitants to enlightenment? The student asked. Maybe. The discourses don't talk about that. But when the Buddha gave his first discourse, a lot of devas gained enlightenment. The leaders must have as well, if their followers did. Considering that the next Buddha currently resides in Tusita, the student asked Sayadaw if Maitreya was the ruler of that realm. Yes. Maitreya to be, his current name is Santusita, is the king of Tusita realm. 41.